So here we are in Microsoft SQL Server Management Studio, and you may sometimes hear me refer to this as SSMS. Now we're going to be spending a lot of time in this environment because this is what's going to allow us to run queries directly against the database. Now this is not how you're actually going to mount an attack. You'll mount the attacks via the web application. But by sitting here in SSMS, it's very easy to show you SQL syntax, execute it, and then show you the results. So actually working in a query environment like this, or an equivalent for a different relational database system, is a really good idea when you're trying to craft your attacks, because it gives you somewhere to get your syntax right, validate it, explore the possibilities, and then move over to the target system and transfer those attacks into the web application you're attempting to exploit. So let's do this. I'm going to go and take a new query. Now I'm running SQL Server locally, so I've got the database engine running on my PC. I'm just going to connect to that, and I've got a sample database I want to use. So I'm going to just say use sample database, and we'll just execute that query. We now see just to the left of execute that we are now in the sample database. You'll notice a difference in case. Most of the time, Microsoft's SQL Server is not case sensitive. It'll depend on the collation in the database, but by default, most implementations won't check for a matching case. That's not always going to be the same with other database systems though, so do keep that in mind. So now that we're in here, one of the most common things you're ever going to do in a database system is simply select data. So, for example, let's just select everything from color. And clearly a star is a wildcard for everything. Now I can just press F5 to run this directly. And here we can see in our results panel, we've got 8 colors. Pretty straightforward. Now again, keep in mind that I'm going through this now because we're going to use some of these patterns in actual SQL injection attacks. Now one of the things we'll often want to do is rather than select every column, let's just select the name column. And we'll run that, and now we only have one column. Pretty straightforward stuff. What I want to do now though is filter this result. And in fact, I only want to get colors that have an ID of 4. So we'll run that, and of course we only get one color. Now differences in things like spacing, for example, don't matter either. So I could have a space between these. Run it again, runs just fine. So throughout this course, you may see different usages of spacing. The other thing we can do here is change operators. Doesn't have to be equal to 4. We may actually make this greater than 4. And of course, if we do this, we're going to get more results. Again, simple stuff. Now, one thing that we're going to see throughout this course as we start exfiltrating data via an injection risk is we're going to use an order by clause a bit. So let's take a look at that now. That's pretty self-explanatory. We'll run it, and here are our results ordered very nicely in an alphabetical fashion. Now we've got 4 results, starting with brown. Sometimes, particularly as we get into injection attacks, we only want to take the first result. So let's just take the top one. And now we only have brown. So this is a very basic select syntax. Let's now do this. Let's grab a new query. And what I want to do first is just check what colors we've got in that database again. And we'll run that. Okay, that's what we saw a moment ago. Let's go and do an update now. And let's say change purple to violet. So I'm just going to take a new command, a couple of lines down, and go with update color set name equals violet, where name equals purple. Now because I've got 2 queries here, I'm just going to select this second one, F5 to run, and it will only run that one. 1 row affected. Let's go back to that select statement. We'll highlight it, and we'll run that, and now we have violet in row 7. But of course it's violet with a lowercase v. And as you'll see, the update still happened, even though I typed purple with a lowercase p. So I had purple with a capital P in the database, but because Microsoft SQL Server is usually case insensitive and the collation of this particular column inherits that case insensitivity, I didn't need a capital P. So as we go through this course and we're running commands, you'll see that I'll usually just do everything in lowercase. Doesn't matter if it's uppercase in the underlying database. At least it very, very rarely matters. So the last thing we might do here is let's do an insert statement. So I'm just going to jump down to the end, new statement, and let's insert into color in the name column a value of orange. Highlight it, run it, jump back up, run the select statement just to check, and now we can see orange is record number 9, which also happens to be color ID number 9. So all of this is pretty fundamental SQL syntax. Selecting from a table with a where clause, taking individual columns, taking only the first one, and of course it could be the first 2 or 3 or however many you want to take, and then basic update and insert statements. All of these are simple queries in the database. And where this is going to get interesting in terms of SQL injection is when we start mixing up the data and our queries from the application. Let's move on now and take a look at a couple of other common patterns in SQL syntax that we're going to use when we actually exploit injection risks. And the next one I want to look at is statement termination.